Hi, and welcome to Complete and Cast, the official podcast of Complete and Box Video Games. I'm your host, Spencer, and today we have another one of our review segments. This is our fourth video game review, part number 4, and today we are once again joined with Parker Lindstrom.
Hey, how's everybody doing on the official CIB podcast?
I want to... Well, let me ask you first. Did you get the note from my lawyer? The one that said that you can't be on the unofficial one anymore?
I know. Look, I did start another unofficial one, and I did get a letter about it, but I think it's necessary, so I'm gonna keep doing it, and you're just gonna have to take me to court. I apologize. It's probably gonna cost us a lot of money, but I really think it's important to get that.
It seems worth it. All the lawyers in the world are like, yes, please, absolutely, great.
I mean, I have like 10,000 subscribers currently, so I mean, I'm sorry. I don't know how many that the CIB one has, but you know,
like
it's big.
9,999.
Okay,
so
well, I got that one.
Today on the official podcast, game review number 4. Here's kind of this one's kind of different from the last story we did, which were all Resident Evil games. Today, this is a slight turn,
slight departure.
We're talking about Life is Strange. Life is Strange is a story-based game. If you're familiar with any of the TellTale games, say the Walking Dead series, that gives you an idea of Life is Strange. Now, Life is Strange is much more of like an adventure game as well, in that you can interact with the everything a lot more than the TellTale games. The TellTale games, I love them, but they're pretty much a visual storybook where you just go through the steps. Whereas this, there were times, honestly, that I was like, it's so open that there were times where I was like, what do I do?
Right.
Because it is a little bit of a more open game. So, this came out a couple years ago. I think it was a PC one first, although it might have been a download on everything.
Yeah, I played it first on PC, and then I played it again on PS4 since you got it on PS4. I was like, oh, I'm going to play it through it again. Because since it is a story game where there's choices, the story changes. So I wanted to try it again with different choices. So,
and that's a big thing when we're talking today. Parker did play the game before, and then he played it again and made like a lot of different choices, because there's always a lot of big choices. And I only ever played the game one time. We're playing on the PS4 version. I don't think there's any difference, but just in case there is. So let's get into this, because we got a lot to talk about, especially with the first subject, which is the story. Right. Now, in a game like this, the story is going to be the big part.
Yeah.
We talked about this beforehand. We're grouping story along with characters, obviously. Mm-hmm. And obviously, in a game like this, something like the characters and the interactions and all that stuff, that's the meat of the game.
Right.
So this story that we're talking about is the meat of the game. So, Parker, let's start with you on this one. You just recently finished it a couple days after I did.
Yeah.
I guess. Do you want to start at the beginning for like explain what the story is, or just like kind of go into?
Yeah. So the story is like you have this girl that learns that she has the power to control time when her kind of estranged best friend that she hasn't seen in 5 years, or I think it's 5 years. I
believe it's 5. Yeah,
5. So she hasn't seen her friend in 5 years from back where she grew up. And she is about to see her friend get shot, and she discovers that she has the power to reverse time. And so when she does, she's able to make changes so that her friend does not get killed. And then the story kind of goes from there, where she...
let me say this real quick, just in case. And I'm sure you're listening to a review out there. This game it's a great story.
Right.
And we're talking spoilers.
Right.
So please play the game first before you listen. We're going to talk every part of the story. So
absolutely.
Just in case. I don't want to get this
wrong. Absolutely. So there's not much. There's not much you could say about the story if you're not going to talk about spoilers.
Right. Absolutely. So just to put that out there.
Yeah. So So then basically it's just her, and her friend, this estranged friend, kind of solving a murder mystery. Another young girl, 18, 19-year-old, went missing 6 months ago. That was, another mutual friend. And so you just kind of are solving this mystery and unlocking what happens from there. That's the general overall story. And we could go into the finer details.
Absolutely. And I think we will at some point during this. There are some parts of the let's first talk, and because it's a complicated story and there's a lot of complicated stuff going on. So let's talk about the story first compared to any other game that I've ever played has a unique thing, which is that rewind capability.
Right.
Now, because of that rewind capability, except for a very few situations where the character will specifically say, "Oh no, my power has been used up."
Yeah, there's only twice I think that it happens. Like, once when that one girl's going to jump off the building, and then there's another one.
I think where she's held captive at the end. Like, she can't do it at first for some reason.
No, she could do it. She just doesn't. She can't jump into pictures because there's no pictures.
Right. Okay.
Which is another power she unlocks.
Yeah, and that's later in the game. She finds out that by staring at a picture and focusing on it, that she can go to that time.
Right. That moment. But like, she can't stay in that moment.
She can only
be there for like maybe 10 minutes and make any changes she could make. But then that affects the future dramatically, obviously. So, pictures will change because there'll be different things in them, things like that.
Now let's talk about, I guess, first, the ability to rewind time.
Right.
Very unique. I very much enjoyed it.
Yep.
I guess that's most of the good stuff. It was very fun.
Well, it was used in a different way. Like, I mean, when you play Prince of Persia,
good example.
It's interesting because you're like, it's like an action game, so you're using it to like jump around and do all that stuff. And in a game like Braid, it is more puzzle based, where like you are doing things, manipulating time, and using that to solve puzzles. But this is specifically associated with character interactions and conversations. So it's definitely unique in that regard, and I think they did a really good job with it. So you can talk to somebody, and then you can find out a piece of information, and then you can rewind and then talk to that person again and steer the conversation having known that piece of information. And sometimes it gets them to say more than they would have said before.
And that's one of the coolest parts of that for me. The one that I'll remember being my favorite one is when you have to get the keys to the RV for the local drug dealer guy.
Right.
And
that's the other thing that you find out is that any item you pick up goes back with you in time. So everything on your body and all that stuff goes back with you. So that is super helpful because you could pick up items like...
And that was one of those situations where I stood there for a while. There wasn't many options to do, but it was you had to get the keys from this guy, and this guy hates you. So if you talk to him, he's like, F off.
Right.
And you're like, how do I get this dude who's saying F off to give me the keys? And I think eventually you provoke him into showing the keys, and he's like...
Or getting stuff out of his pockets to show you something.
Yeah, and he's like, you want these keys? And then he sits them down, and you literally go and take him, and he goes, what? And then you return time, he goes back to eating his meal, and you have his keys.
Right.
So that's the kind of stuff that, really, I'm so glad that they did it that way because it's very neat.
Yeah,
one of the other major parts about and obviously you can use that for a lot of stuff, you can literally talk to any character and then be like, I didn't like what I said to them, even though it's really not going to matter in the long run. You can be like, I don't want to be a jerk.
Right.
Or, you can see there's this one girl that is constantly, having
Alyssa,
bad luck.
Yeah,
Alyssa.
in every chapter, there's one or two moments where Alyssa gets hurt, and you can use your rewind power to stop her from getting hurt.
Like an example is you're walking by and you see that she gets splashed by water by the side of the road, so you just rewind time and you push her out of the way or tell her to move.
You warn her and she moves and, whatever. So yeah, it definitely has some cool, not just conversational, but some other cool gameplay aspects like that.
Now, every once in a while, they will give you a big choice.
Right.
Where it's like... the first one, the very first one, and this is a good example, you see the local rich kid, Nathan Prescott, pull a gun out on your friend Chloe.
Right.
And it first is shown that he will shoot her because he's mentally unstable.
Right.
And then she figures out the right one in time, and you go from there, you pull the fire alarm, and then he doesn't shoot her, but he still brandishes the gun.
Right.
And you see the principal there, and you have the choice of saying, Nathan Prescott has a gun.
Right.
Or... saying nothing.
Right.
Now, this game does a really good job of making everything very complicated because life is strange and complicated.
Absolutely.
So the first thing I did, of course, was I stooled and I was like, Nathan Prescott has a gun.
Right.
And he was like, the thing about that family is they own everything in this town. Like, he's literally the Richie Rich.
Like, if you watch Back to the Future, he's like the Biff family.
Exactly.
Where it's like, so they just are,
So you say to him, and he's like, well, you almost get in trouble for it. And you're like, you got to believe me. And he's like, I'll look into it, but I'm gonna watch you.
Yeah,
and you're
very
like,
frustrating.
You're like, dude,
as a player, not obviously frustrating from like, because clearly I'm sure that happens like in places, but it was very frustrating to feel like powerless.
Now the cool thing
like,
about
why are you listening?
The cool thing about those is when you make that huge decision, kind of like the TellTale games, they'll give you two options. It'll stop time, and you're able to just like think about it. Okay, what? Right. Now, the thing that I like about it is you can, if you decide to,
you can rewind
and then do it again.
Right.
But
so they don't ruin the big choices. They don't let you like not do that, which would have been frustrating.
They always have a negative side effect. It does not matter.
Yeah, both options will have a negative.
There's
side
never
effect.
A choice where it's like, oh, I'm glad I did this one and hated and the other one. That's like, I told about Nathan Prescott, but now the principal is going to be watching me, and Nathan might find out, and he's crazy.
Right.
Or I didn't tell him, and whatever.
Right.
So that part is like really interesting. There's this game set up in episodes,
right.
five episodes. Ever since TellTale started doing that, everyone does it. It's just an easy.
This game was released as episode, so there was like months between each episode. So like
this is one of those games I would not want to wait months.
Right? Yeah, it would be very. It was very frustrating at the time because it was like I think I got into it when like the first three episodes were out. So I was able to get through those quick, but then it was like, Now,
if we're just gonna blaze through the story real quick, because there are parts I want to point out. You're going out, and essentially this is a coming back together story between Max Caulfield, the main character, and Chloe.
Right. Yep.
You eventually earn her trust, but then you realize that Chloe has, lots of problems, and it's just one of those things where every character in this game, is damaged in some way.
Right.
In fact, the only character who isn't is what's that boy's name who loves you? Warren.
Yeah,
the only character who isn't is Warren.
I mean, Warren's being bullied.
Yeah, I guess
but
that's true.
I mean, whatever.
But,
there you see graffiti, you find graffiti around and different stuff. So Warren definitely probably doesn't have an easy time because he's kind of whatever. But there's a couple of other people that like ancillary people that don't seem to have too many issues.
Yeah, that's true. If they're ancillary, yeah.
But the main people all have a lot going on. And honestly, if you probably got to know the ancillary people, they do, because it's just like real life. Everybody has something like going on, like either they have something that they don't like talking about or something whatever in their past. So like it's kind of realistic in that regard, but they do ramp it up a little bit, exaggerated just because it's a game and it's not like
So you're continuing on and you're building up a relationship again with Chloe, and you're essentially becoming the Scooby-Doo team that's trying to figure this big mystery out, and it's actually very interesting and intriguing, and you're just going through all this.
Because it is about building relationships, so it's really neat to watch relationships form and fall apart based on your decisions, just like in real life. But interspersed with this is she keeps having these flashes to a giant tornado destroying the town. And like it's kind of outside of time, like you can't know. Well, you learn that it's like that coming Friday, because in the vision you like see a newspaper. So like you like know that something's going to happen at the end of this week, but you have no idea what it is.
Let's get to that at the end of the story, because that's where things get a little bit crazy. Right. So you're going on, and all this stuff's happening, and it's just too much to talk about all the different character interactions. There's just so much. But one of the main thing that happens is she figures out this ability to go back in time via the picture, which I think... Here's my first major problem.
Right.
As an idea, it's really cool. Right. Like, to be like, I can look at this, like, I can look at the Malcolm Butler interception picture, from...
Well, she has to be in it.
Oh, she has to be in it. That's right. So
it has to be a memory of hers.
Okay.
Which is why it worked for her, because that's why the mechanic of her taking selfies was from the beginning. That's why they had her... I
never really thought about that.
As that thing, because she can't just go to any picture.
Okay.
But...
That makes it a little bit... But
right. She can go to that moment in time where that picture was taken, and so, like... Sometimes they're at an integral point. So, like, when she left 5 years ago, the reason she lost touch with her friend Chloe was because that her father had died. Chloe's father had died. And it was really upsetting, and Chloe took it really hard. Like any teenager would do. It's awful when that happens. But Max just like, I feel like most teenagers, I mean, she was 13, 14 at the time.
Didn't know what to do.
She didn't know what to do or say, and you're at a loss. You're a kid. You don't know what to say, and if you move away, it's very easy to just stop talking to that person. I mean,
it's easier,
right? And if that person's not like bothering, if that person's not trying to rebuild the relationship. Like, it's not like she was, she was outright ignoring her friend Chloe. She was just choosing to not deal with it. And now she has to deal with it. And so the integral thing is that her dad got in a car accident. And there's a picture from the day that the car accident happened. So the first time she learns this power to go back into a picture is at this integral moment of when the dad decides to go get in the car.
So you go back in time. Well, let me, before we get into that specific one, let me just say what my beef is. Now, I understand. Thank you for pointing that out. I didn't really think about that. But when we're talking time travel, and not just time travel about 30 seconds, we open up a whole can of worms. There is literally no way, because of human nature and the way our brains work, to have a thing where time travel works, where there's not like, you're like, what? Where it just gets like much more confusing. The best example I can think of, and I'm not as learned on movies and stuff as you would be like a Terminator. Terminator makes it really simple, and it's like you can send stuff back, but not to the future. And it's just like, if you send something back, it is what it is. It can change, and they don't really go into it anymore. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's where this is at. I mean, it only goes back. You only go back. And it makes ramifications for the future.
Right, so I guess it's Terminator rules, and it's about as easy as you can get, but it's still a little crazy.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Going into this particular one, and like when I was talking to Parker and our friend Mush, who we had on the show before, like, you can never have anything good in this game. Like, it's such a bright, fun indie game, but at the end of everything is like terrible,
horrible.
So you go back in time and you meet this. They did this so great. You meet Chloe's dad for the first time. So Chloe herself in this present is like this punk that like a punk with a heart of gold, but like she's got attitude and she's got problems.
Absolutely. So she's very angry at everybody and everything.
You go back 5 years, and of course they're normal. These girls are normal 13-year-old girls, and you meet the dad, who is like the best human.
Yeah,
like,
he's so funny.
Like he's just great, and like he's like, I'm like watching this digitized character, and I'm like, damn, I could be a better dad.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
So I'm like, damn, man. And so you're watching this dude, and you're like, this dude dies today. And like, it's so lame because like the mom calls, and she's like, and he's like, oh, what, honey? Oh, you need groceries? Great, I'll be right over. And then he makes jokes, and they did such a good job writing that part. Oh my god, just like
all the writings in that part. I mean, most parts, but in that part's great because a lot of it doesn't happen where in a conversation. Like, there's good writing in the conversations, but that's something where like you're doing stuff because you're trying to like solve this puzzle of not letting him be able to get in the car, and while you're doing that, Chloe and the dad are talking, and it's very natural. Like, it's very like, like he's looking for his keys. He says the S word, and she yells from the kitchen like, that's $1 for the swear jar, and he's like, I know, and it's like it's just like the everything, like it it's very natural, and you're like, wow, you just like get you're brought right into the story.
And you look, and like even the way they set it up, like the house itself is very nice, whereas like after the dad dies, the house becomes like not great, and the mom's like working really hard and like not able, whatever. So you hide the keys, and then essentially like it goes back to the present or whatever, like you blur out of the picture, and Chloe's dad survives, but of course, because this game
nobody
is this
can
game,
be happy.
you go back in present, and you go to the house, and by the way, I called this literally, and Ashley, my wife, she was like, don't say that. You go to the house, and Chloe's dad's there, and he's like, oh my god, Max Caulfield. And you're like, no. I'm like, no.
Right, so like
something bad.
So
something
like clearly you haven't kept in touch even with him alive, so something else must have happened.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. So like you're like, and I was like, and like he was like, oh, Chloe would be love to see you, and I was like, she's in a wheelchair. And it's worse than that. She was in. Yeah, she got her like first car, and the worst part is it's not like. Not that this would ever make it better, but it's like, I made a stupid mistake and went drunk driving at 18. It's like, I was driving and got jackknifed by like an SUV.
Absolutely.
And she literally has like, can only move her head. Chloe. So she's in a wheelchair now, she can only move her head. And then you find out through this, you play through like this alternate reality for a little bit, that she is like dying. Like dying.
Yeah,
like
her lungs can't
keep it. Her lungs are dying. And
she's weakening.
And they do such a good job of it. Like Chloe's dad is like, guess I'll have to get a third job.
Yeah, and they're like, he's always working on the bills.
You find like all these bills, and you find these like mortgages, and you're like, dude. And one of the craziest parts, which by the way, I want to know what you did when I finished with this, is she says, Max, you gotta end my life, which I did not.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I did it both times, I mean, the first time, I should say, and the second time, obviously, I knew it was going to happen, but the only reason I did it is because I knew full well that she was going to warp back and undo the change, because I was like, there's no way she's going to let this, like, there's no way this game just ends, because the game would be over at that point. I knew there was more episodes, so I'm like, since it doesn't matter, I'm just going to kill her, because this choice doesn't matter, and I want to see what would happen or whatever. But yeah, because it is actually the second time I chose what you did, which is not, and she gets angry, but then you just go back anyway.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, if you do it, she there's like it's a little bit elongated where you kind of have this like moment where you look at you like talk a little bit more, and then you do it, and then you kind of hold her hand, and she drifts off.
I gotta say that in a game full of just sad parts, that's the saddest part. Like, oh my, like everything about it, you're
absolutely.
Just like, and it's like so rough knowing that like Max, for even though she couldn't control it because like whatever, you're playing Max of the present and not Max of the whatever. Anyway, like it's like that you never came by, and she's like, I'm glad to have you, and she's not mad. She's not like, why would you never come? She's like, I get it. Like, this sucks. Yeah. This sucks. Everything sucks. You know
Everything
what I mean?
sucks. Absolutely.
Then you go back to the present.
Right.
And your main job at this point is to finish this murder mystery.
Right. So I mean, you should say after you kill or don't kill her, you go back in time again.
Oh, right.
And then don't change anything and let him get in the car, and then it warps you back to the future.
Because with the way they put it, it's like she would be like, Chloe's dead or Chloe's dad is dead, kind of thing.
Like. From Max's point of view, she's already really... I mean, it's not her dad, and she's already worked through Chloe's dad dying, and she wants Chloe. Like, Chloe's her best friend. Like, and the fact that she didn't talk to her for 5 years, like, some people might go like, oh, that's so dumb, but it's like, I have some close friends that, like, I haven't talked to for a while, but I know, like, I would do something for them at the drop of a hat. Like, they're close friends, and they'll always be close friends. And if things worked out where I lived closer to them or something, like, we would hang out more, and that's just the way it is. But like, so she wants her friend, and like, again, I mean, just as a quick mini spoiler, depending on your choices, it can be more than a friend. Like, it doesn't have to necessarily just be a friend. It could be your love interest, in which case that makes it even more impactful. She wants her true love or her best friend, one or the other, but she doesn't care as much about having Chloe's dad be alive with no Chloe.
Right.
So she's like, I'm going back to change this to make sure that I have Chloe, the Chloe that I...
And again, the game does...
Which is slightly selfish,
the game does a great job, because you're like, you are now without this great character, this dad who's just awesome. Right.
Yeah, they definitely made it where, like, it's a tough decision because he is so cool, whereas they could have made him kind of a jerk or just, whatever, and then, but, like, you'd still want to do it because you love Chloe, and Chloe, like, is upset, but, they make him, like, awesome.
So as far as the story is concerned, we're pretty much through 4 of the 5 chapters.
Right.
Chapter 5 is where everything gets really, really crazy.
Right.
Like, it feels like a different game at that point. So, I don't know how to go... I mean, obviously we're talking...
So the main thing, the thing that's carrying you through all this is that Chloe, in the 5 years you've been gone, became really good friends with this other girl named Rachel Adams.
Yeah, Rachel Adams.
Or Rachel Amber... I think is what
Rachel
it is.
Amber.
Rachel Adams is, I think, Rachel McAdams.
Oh, I'm
from
sorry.
The Notebook. But
yeah, I'm sorry.
I think it's Rachel Amber.
Rachel Amber. My bad. Sorry.
But yes, I just was like, I think that sounds like something unfamiliar.
Like a real thing.
But yeah, so this other friend then goes missing, and her and Chloe were really close, and they were gonna like take on the world and go to LA and become models or whatever. Or this girl was.
And that's another thing to do a great job. There's a way of storytelling. You never, ever, ever, ever in any past or future or whatever
you never
meet
see
her.
Right.
But
exactly.
they do a great job of like portraying this character.
Exactly. Like
however,
you think she's awesome because You look at all this stuff. Everybody liked her. She was friends with everybody in the school.
It's just one of those where every person you talk to is like, oh, she would have been a model. She
Right.
would have been
Everybody
blah,
loved
blah.
her. Like, even the jerk that you get the RV keys from, who's just like an a-hole to everybody. Like, he like was in love with her, and he like helps you when he knows that you're trying to do stuff for her. Like, everybody loves this girl. And so she went missing and no one knows where she is. So that's kind of been the whole murder mystery throughout this whole thing. There's a little sidetrack with you trying to change the past of Chloe's dad. But once you get back into it, you're solving the mystery of this girl being gone. Because she's missing. No one's found her body. So for all you know, she's still alive. And so it's even more imperative to find her because, you know, maybe you can still hang out with her, you know, whatever.
So we get to the major, which this one caught me by surprise. I must admit the major reveal of that,
right?
Which is the person you're tracking Nathan Prescott,
right.
the disturbed kid, the whole time, and you're finding all these clues to show that he's doing this.
Right.
You find the big thing first is you find this bunker that's made underneath a
barn,
that's owned by the Prescotts,
right?
And it's this like not futuristic, very high tech,
modern,
whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like a very specific thing, and you find all these photos of these girls.
Right.
In fact, the one girl that tried
like
to kill herself, you find binders of
yeah.
these pictures, and you're like, wow, we got to go find Nathan Prescott.
Right. And now I thought it was going to be his dad. Because there's all this stuff about Nathan Prescott's dad.
You find all these emails
right, where he's like really awful and mean, but also he says things like,
I'll get you out of this.
But also he says things like, you need to be like, you know, one of the Prescotts, or like, I'm training you to be like the head of this family, and things like that. And then you think, oh, so maybe like the Prescotts over time have been these like crazy, like a serial killer.
Yep.
Every father generation have been so I assumed it was going to be the dad. We were going to find the dad, and he was going to be the bad guy.
So you go to this big dance type thing held by the Vortex
Club,
and
all the popular
I will say I will say that the second I kind of figured it out was when this Victoria girl, who you find out through a whole series of events, that's the next person on the list. When this Victoria girl won a contest, I was like, this is weird. Like, it felt weird.
Because you know that she's the next victim.
She's the next in line. Right. And then you find out that the person behind all this the whole time was the teacher from the very beginning. And
that you have been in love with. Like, he's the reason you went to the school. And, like, he's so famous. He's this photographer. He's so famous. Everybody loves him. He's written books. He's like world famous, but he teaches at the school.
And the very beginning of the game is you like wake up, quote unquote, in one of his lectures, and he's like a very engaging professor that you're like, I couldn't see being in a class with his and being like, oh, like he's like, let's talk about this. Let's actually talk, you know. And it's like, oh, it was very good. And you find out that he's the thing, and you find that out by him killing Chloe, by shooting Chloe. So.
You go to this place.
For a brief moment in time, Chloe is dead. Dead.
Right.
And you get captured and you get taken to this place, which you find out is obviously his.
Right.
He worked with he found out that Nathan Prescott was like had problems, and he like kind of cultivated
him.
And manipulated him, and then got this thing built.
Which immediately was like, I mean, it's one of those things where once they reveal it,
you're like,
you can look back and see all the stuff, and like I did, like going through it, I felt like Nathan's the things Nathan would say were like, I was like, he doesn't seem evil.
He has problems, but he's
not definitely
evil.
Seems problem, but he seems unstable. But he doesn't seem evil, and I was like, man, I'm really. But then after this, you feel really terrible for Nathan because he's like manipulated, like,
and you're like, where's Nathan? And he's like, he's dead.
That too.
And that's the thing. I mean, I guess, you know, it just kind of is what it is. It would be in real life. You're not like, I think that person's evil. You're like, that person's unhinged, but they wouldn't be like the evil person. Would you be like, et tu, Brutus, or you know, whatever? You're like,
the evil person is usually like somebody that's truly evil. You're probably gonna like because they're likable until you see their evilness.
So they did a good job
because,
of setting,
he's a sociopath or whatever. Yeah. So he's like very personable. Like you like him, you want to get to know him, you want to be friends with him. Like even the few things that he did that were suspicious, I like for whatever reason, the first time I played it anyway, obviously the second time I knew it was happening, but the first time I played it through, like, I was like, dismissive of it. Like, there's a point where he's like talking to this one girl that tries to kill herself, and it's like right before she tries to kill herself, and she just like says something to him, and he, you can't quite hear what he says, but she walks off crying, and you're like, oh, what did he say? But then I immediately was like, probably nothing. You know what I mean? She probably was upset or whatever. Yeah. Like, you immediately give him the benefit of the doubt, but it's very possible that she was like saying something like, I feel like I remember you being like, who knows? She might have had some sort of memory, because if he's the one taking pictures or whatever.
Yeah, so he takes these girls, he drugs them, he takes these, because his whole thing is he wants the perfect pictures, and he thinks the perfect participant is like not quite with it.
Right.
Like that,
but also that he wants to capture the moment that innocence becomes like you lose innocence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like either through death or through whatever, but like so he's capturing these girls and he's like keeping them captive.
I guess it's somewhat important to note that Nathan Prescott was actually the one to kill Rachel.
Exactly.
He went to go sedate her and gave her too much, and she just OD'd her.
He wanted to be like his mentor, Mr. Jefferson.
So obviously, they both did it.
Right. But... So he tried to do it himself, and it failed miserably.
So yeah, you find this. You're stuck. I don't want to harp on this too much. You're stuck underneath, and you through a series of pretty cool events where you find like pictures of yourself that you can go back in time and all this stuff.
It's pretty cool.
It gets very trippy. It gets very trippy.
Because at one point you go into a picture in the past, and then while you're in that picture in the past, you go again to a deeper picture in the past, and so like it's really like. Because then you come back out in levels, kind of like Inception, and it's like really like mind numbing because you're like, what?
So eventually you get out of it, and you get through it, and Chloe's stepdad, who the entire time you think is just a doofus army guy who couldn't quite let it go, ends up being like a very good guy and helps you out and all this stuff.
Yep.
He actually finds his way down and subdues or kills the teacher, depending on what you choose.
Yeah.
Which obviously I chose to not have him killed because I was like, I want this dude to rot,
gotcha.
Kind of thing. So anyway, you do this, and eventually you get yourself out. Now, we're at the point where we should mention that several times during the game, these powers not seem to have an effect on Max, where like she will be getting like random nosebleeds, or she'll be like, I feel really weird, and she'll tell Chloe. Which, by the way, that's really good how they do it, where they, like... I don't know how you would explain to a friend that, like, you have the power to, like, go back in time.
Yeah.
And, like, I'd be like, yeah, sure. Be like, what happens? Like, tell me, the lotto numbers or whatever. But, like, you'd still be like, you're lucky. And eventually they work it out where she's like, I know you can do this. And she's like... It would be so weird to be like, wait, Parker, did you... It just said 32 minutes, and now it's 28. And did you go back in time? You know what I mean? It's like, I had to... We messed up. I had to go back,
Right.
So she uses it a lot, and it ends up, like, really, like, messing with her. And you're at the point at the very end where the crazy weather's happening and the tornado's coming in.
Right.
Right,
because you find out that that's on Friday. The game starts on a Monday, and then you find out that the thing's going to happen on Friday. And over the course of each day, every day ends, because you have this diary that you can read and stuff. And so there's these, it's very, like, obvious when a new day is happening or whatever. And at the end of each day, some sort of catastrophic environmental thing happens. Obviously, some of them are not hugely scary, but, like, the first day it starts snowing, but it's, like, 50 degrees out. It's, like, October, and it's, like, warm, like 40 or 50 degrees out, and it starts snowing. And it's like, what? Like, very confusing. Then on the next day, there's like a bunch of birds that are dying. I forget what the second day is.
And there's like beached whales.
The beach whales.
And then there's
like
a solar eclipse out of nowhere.
A solar eclipse,
and like
that
that's
is not,
the one where Warren's like a scientist, and he's like, nobody knew this was
right, because solar eclipses, years and years in advance. Like when it's gonna. So it was like, what? And then the last night, there's two moons in the sky.
Yeah.
Now, like, obviously, so I mean, let's dig into this. Like, it's because she's rewinding time. So every time she rewinds time gets out of sync.
Right.
So the reason that there's two moons is because in a parallel universe, the moon is slightly different, and which is why an eclipse happens, because the moon is slightly out of phase with where it's supposed to be because of her rewinding of time.
Right.
And so, like, that's the ramification, and
there's this whole thing where she blames herself, and it's like, well, can you, because, would you, whatever. And, you go through this, and eventually you get to the point where you go through town, and you save a bunch of people from this, like, huge hurricane.
Right, the tornado is, like, destroying everything, and it's, like,
it is like
houses.
People will, like, all die if you don't save them.
Exactly.
Stuff. And you get to the pretty much end of the game where, I think we're at that point now, I don't think we skipped too much.
No, yeah.
Where, you have one final choice.
Right.
And this is going to be a big thing we're going to go into, and it's either you save Chloe.
Right.
And the town perishes.
Right.
Or you sacrifice Chloe and the town survives.
Right.
And it makes sense playing through the game. You just realize that Chloe's kind of cursed. Like, it's just how sometimes you're like, it wasn't meant to be in another lifetime, kind of thing. It's like Chloe is just kind of a cursed person.
Right.
And it makes sense with that whole either her dad dies or she dies kind of thing. It's like there's just something about her or something about Max, something, whatever.
Something, right.
So I did let me go with the one I did first. I did Save Chloe, who this isn't a huge deal. Was just my friend. She wasn't my like love interest.
You didn't
or
pick
whatever.
those options.
No, I liked Warren. Was like he
didn't seem like a jerk.
He's a boy that you. I'm not saying you have to love him, but you should give him a chance.
Absolutely. I mean, especially the character they present of Max in the beginning. I'm like, Warren definitely seems like they could date. Like, it's not like Warren is super awful or weird, and Max isn't like the most amazing person to ever live. Do you know what I mean? So it's like very believable that they could end up together. So
I chose to save Chloe because I want to see what happened to the town. And if I'm gonna give, I
gotta be honest, that ending probably is the bad ending.
Bad ending, right? So I chose to do that and save Chloe. And even for a bad ending, I would want more out of this. Essentially, it is probably 30 seconds long.
Right.
And all it shows is that... Now, it doesn't specifically say anything.
Right.
But it shows the whole town in ruins. You don't see any signs of life. Literally everything's in ruins.
Yeah. Like theoretically, because you go to that one...
diner,
you go to the diner, and they're there, and they're, holing up. But, so you have no idea whether they kind of
I'm just going to assume, because they would show something. I assume the entire town dies. So you choose Chloe over the entire town, and they give me no personal reason to believe otherwise.
Right.
And
I think that probably is why the ending's so quick, is because that is the reality.
What else is there to show?
But that is the reality, and why? They don't want to. You don't want to dwell on that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Do you know what I mean? Because it's pretty awful. Because you've just made the decision that thousands of people die so that you could have your best friend.
Right. And like I said, I chose it just because I wanted to see it.
Absolutely.
I didn't personally like Chloe, and if I had to make my decision, it would be to let her die, but I wanted to see this one seems crazier.
Right, seems like the crazier
you chose originally the opposite one. Can you go into that a little bit?
Okay, so it's clearly the good ending, and so it's a lot more involved. And so what happens is when you choose to sacrifice Chloe to save the whole town, then what happens is you look at the picture. Chloe gives you the picture of the butterfly that you take in the bathroom when she's about to get shot. So it was a picture you took early in the game because you see this really pretty butterfly, and you took it, and Chloe picked it up at some point in the story and was like, I love this picture, and she holds on to it. So she hands that to you. So I guess here this breaks that rule. Max isn't visible in the picture, but I guess Max has to have taken the picture.
Taken it, okay.
So as long as it's been taken by Max, she can go back to that moment, which I guess is not quite like the selfie thing, but she has to be a photographer to have enough pictures that she took. But so she goes back in time to that exact moment, and then makes the decision to not do anything, and Nathan Prescott shoots her.
Okay.
And so she never uses her power. And so then that way the tornado never happens.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
That makes sense.
Because she knows that as soon as she uses her power, even for a second, it'll cause major environmental disaster wherever she's currently living. Like, I mean, obviously it was the worst there because it was probably something having to do with, like, you know, the particles that are making up the atoms or whatever that are making up her body have gone back in time and have existed in 2 points in time.
Yeah.
They probably cause mass craziness on an atomic level that then butterfly effects up into major events. So that's why the tornado was happening in Arcadia Bay, and it wasn't like the whole world's ending. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was just wherever Max is, if she's using her power, is where it's going to be a localized event of some sort of, you know, dramatic scale.
Okay.
So she decides to not use her power at all, ever. And then you get to see, like, how everything plays out.
What does anything happen to Nathan Prescott specifically?
Yes, because he shoots her, and he's in the bathroom with a gun on the floor, and he's like,
I didn't know
whatever.
if he somehow got his way out of it.
No, I mean, immediately, like, you know, David Madsen comes in, the security guy who's like a hard ass, like, he comes in and busts him, and so that you see Nathan Prescott going off to jail. Soon after, you see Mr. Jefferson going off to jail because you, Max, obviously know this information still. So in this new reality that you've gone back to, you, like, told on Mr. Jefferson, obviously. Yeah. And so then, so you know, Jefferson gets justice, everybody is saved. You know, Rachel Amber gets discovered, her body, and so, like, that mystery gets solved, and then you then take part in the funeral for Chloe, and so all the characters that you've affected over the course of the game show up, and depending on your choices, certain ones are there or aren't there. So, for instance, Frank will be there, the RV guy. And he will or won't have his dog, depending on your choices, because you can accidentally kill the dog.
That's really neat, yeah.
And different stuff like that. So the dog will be there with him. And there's some other characters that, like, if you were nice to, will be there in support of you. So, like, there's one, like, the one popular girl, Victoria, who's, like, total B the whole time, has two, like, best friends that are also total Bs. But you can be nice to them and learn stuff about their lives and talk to them, and they will like, you know, start to become friends with you. Like, the one girl, Taylor, who's like a total jerk, her mom, like, is like going into surgery for her back, and if you find out this information and ask about it enough, she'll, like, be at the funeral and other things like that.
That's really cool.
So there's a bunch of different characters. So it's definitely, like, the good ending, because you see all the stuff and there's all the story, and, you know, you go up to the, like, lighthouse point that at the moment that you made the decision to sacrifice Chloe, you go up there and you, like, make a little, like stack of stones to, like, memorialize her, and you have, like, a little moment, and it's, like, all nice. And then you just, you know, now you get to go live your life, and, you know, who knows what happens from there. But so it's pretty crazy.
Clearly that choice is the
right.
Good.
Now, it's pretty crazy that you know, she like, I guess she still has this power. They never say
but she just
doesn't.
Never ever use it.
Right, which is like that part of the story is, like, very intriguing to me, because I'm like, I don't know that I could never use it ever.
No. Like,
yeah,
a small thing, whatever, but right. Like a huge
because clearly this Chloe thing didn't work out, and then clearly she knows that it'll have major ramifications. But, like, sometimes there's something that's probably important enough. Do you know, even if it's something in the world. Do you know what I mean?
Like, if you see someone get hit by a car and you could have went back and saved
right,
them,
or I mean, something crazy, like, you know, 9/11 happens or whatever.
Why
and
did
you
I
can,
think
like,
of the same thing? Like,
right,
just
but, like, because
dude, the 9/11 is gonna happen.
Because not only can you rewind, but you could go back even just a day if you had enough pictures. Do you know what I mean? So if you took a picture of yourself every day,
yeah.
then, like, you could be like, oh, this happened on this day. let me go back to 2 days prior and send an email to somebody that might be able to listen or something. Obviously, whatever. But it definitely seems like, and like with a lot of time travel stories, if they fall apart if you really try to analyze them. So it's really hard to make a time travel story that's completely self-contained.
And I'm okay with, if people are out there being like, why don't they explain how she got these powers?
Right, well, yeah, that's crazy.
At that point, it's a superhero story.
Right,
so,
right.
you just accept it. And, a lot of the great parts of the story is her accepting it and realizing how to use it. So
yeah, for sure.
Overall,
it's the story.
Overall, like I said, this very complicated, complex story, very complicated web of characters. I'm gonna go into my my grade on this again. If you guys remember, it's out of 10.
Right.
And if we so choose, we can do increments of 0.25 or 0.5 or whatever. So
now, right before you that, like one thing that the second time around playing that I really finally came to terms with. The first time I played through it, I was very frustrated with the way some of the characters would actually interact. Like there'd be two choices, and you could pick either one. And after rewinding, I'd realize I don't like either of these choices. You know what I mean? Like the way they say them or something. I would get frustrated a lot at like Max as a character because she would for instance, her friend that tries to kill herself that you save, she like has a thing where she's like, should I tell the cops that I was like, drugged at this party and I don't remember anything, and it's like, absolutely, but you have the option of saying like, don't go to the cops, find out more like evidence, but like I'm like, obviously go to the cops, and then she's like, okay, I'm gonna go talk to the cops, and she's like, well, don't bring me up, and it's like, dude, Max, like, get involved. Like, this girl got drugged at a party. Yep. Like, if you need to go and be the testimony on the stand, do it. Like, why are you being whatever? Well, the second time through playing, like, when I got about halfway through, what I finally came to the realization is this is an 18-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when I was 18, I did a lot of dumb stuff and made a lot of dumb decisions that I, like, look back on and cringe at.
Right.
And when I'm talking to a friend who's like 5-10 years younger than me, even just 5 years younger than me, sometimes I'm like, oh man, I see these mistakes that you're about to make. And like sometimes there's no way to really like stop that from happening because people need to learn from their mistakes. Right. That's just the way it is.
Right.
Like Pamela is a high school teacher, or was, but like I was like, oh, I could be a high school teacher. But then from the stories, I'm like, I would be so upset at all the decisions that are being made that I could definitely fix for these kids. Like, by being like, don't do that. Don't hang out with that person. And it's like, yeah, but I like that person. It's like, do not hang out with that person and you will be a much happier, and it's like, but what, and it's like, you have to let people make their own mistakes or they'll never learn. Like, and that's the way it is. And so halfway through the second playthrough, I came to terms with that a lot more, and I definitely like was like, okay, so I'm not gonna. In the beginning, I probably would have graded that a lot harsher. Was the way the characters would interact, because I'm like, man, this is bad writing because I don't like either of these choices. But I realize now that it's actually pretty good writing because she's 18. So even though she has this power, she's not like a wise person. So if you're playing it as a 35, year old, you're going to be like, these decisions are dumb. But it's like, yeah, they're 18-year-old kids. Like, what are you going to do?
It just kind of is what it is.
Anyway, I'm just going to make peace with that because that was something I was...
So when I'm looking at the story, it's a very complex, very, very, very just... I can't... it's one of those games you get home and you're like, I want to play this. I want to get through. I want to figure it out.
Yeah, you definitely keep wanting to know more, especially at the end of each episode. There's something and you're like,
I will say I include characters in with story, naturally, and there's a lot of characters that I'm just not a huge fan of. Like, and it's not even because they're purposely that way. Like, I find a lot of, like, just like you said, this is almost exactly what you just said. I find a lot of stuff that Max says to be like, ugh.
Right.
Or a lot of stuff that Chloe says to be like, ugh. And
there's
a lot
Chloe's
of, like,
very frustrating.
There's a lot of, like, 18-year-old grown moments, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
During Chapter 5, which is all sorts of crazy, it also gets a little unhinged for me, because there's just so much going on, and it's just so crazy and whatever. And also, and again, this is unfair because it's a 2-part ending, but I chose an ending, and it was so bad that I literally did not want to load it up again and do it again.
Right.
So overall, and again, remember with our scores, people, like a 7 is average, an 8 or a 9 is very, very, very good. It would take a considerable amount for me to give a 10 or even above a 9 on anything. For that.
Right.
So like I said, keeping that all in mind, I'm looking at an 8.5 for the story overall. And again, that's very, very enjoyable. That's very enjoyable. Problems, yes. Small budget, yes. I mean, somewhat, but with what they did, very enjoyable.
Yeah, I would go. I want to say a little bit more, but I don't know if I need to go to a 9. So I'll go 8.75 if that's okay.
That's fine with me.
Because I mean, I did like the story a lot, and obviously as much as the like the cliche of like nothing is ever good, or her being in the wheelchair or whatever. Like that doesn't bother me as much as I'm sure it bothers you.
And
right.
like with my personality, I just like when my wife loves watching these depressing indie movies on Netflix, and I hate them. Like I would literally rather do anything else. Like honest, I just hate so for me to go through an indie game like this where everything's depressing and to play it is a testament to the game because if Ash was watching this movie, I would be like, I would watch 1 second and be like, this is so depressing.
Right.
Like I'm sorry, like I would go watch SpongeBob. Like I'm just
Absolutely.
Deal with it. I'm like a kid. I don't care. Like it is what it is.
Yeah.
So like that's definitely a testament to it. So I definitely agree with you.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, you know what? I think I'm gonna bump it up to a 9 because I also the first time I read it a bit, but this time I read every bit of the diary as things were happening.
So there's so much to read.
I mean, by the end, it's like there's like might be 70 pages. I mean, there's short pages,
but still.
But like, and all the descriptions of a lot of the characters and pictures and stuff that change over time, and the writing in the diary is like really, really good, and I have to bump it up a little bit more because of that because it was a feature that didn't need to be there necessarily, but it really was cool. One thing we didn't really touch on, I don't know if you want to just quickly touch on it, is that weird half alive sequence that happens towards the end where like you pass out and you are kind of like trapped in between time and you're in this weird dream.
That's what I meant. That really that's the really crazy part.
Okay,
really,
gotcha.
Yeah, and it's like you're like
I like that, but
you're like
right.
You're
like hiding from characters. They're all trying to
and it's all black and dark and whatever.
Yeah,
and
things are like broken apart. The world's falling apart.
There's 40 of the same character and stuff like that, and it's very bizarre. Like I said, Chapter 5 is a different game from the rest of the game. It just is what it is. Like it just so I guess that kind of.
But anyways,
that. So. Switching over to gameplay, story obviously for this part is going to be just far and beyond the biggest one. Gameplay is more than you would expect for a game like this. Now let's keep this in mind. This isn't necessarily a game,
right?
There's always this thing,
exactly.
But as far as a game like that is concerned, keeping everything. Again, if I give this a high grade, it's not that it's better than Brave Fencer Musashi in gameplay wise. It's that for the game like this, it's very detailed. There's a lot that you can interact with. There's a lot of dialogue choices.
Right.
I like.
There's characters you can play through the game and never have to talk to.
Absolutely.
But you can choose to talk to them.
And like the weird janitor, which Ashley for a little bit was like, did he do it?
Right.
But he's like just weird. He's very nice, but just
very nice.
Just a little odd. You know, just is what it is.
Absolutely.
And there's just so much. And like Parker said, there's so many things. They have this.
Well, I don't know if you ever met them, but there is a homeless character that you could talk to. She's this woman and. You could talk to her. She's clearly not all there, but you could talk to her and you can save her by telling her about the tornado. And later, when you go back and everything's falling apart during the tornado, you could go over there and you'll see her spot. There's like something fell on that spot and crushed it.
Wow.
And like you'll either see her arm or you won't see her arm depending on what choices you made.
Wow, I've never met that character.
Exactly.
Wow. And like I said, it's just there's so much there. There's this other really cool gimmicky thing that they have that in certain parts of the game you can take out your camera and take a picture of it, and then like you'll
right. So it's like a collectible,
like a collectible. So
right.
you'll see like chapter 1 has 10 pictures, and you can kind of see what's going on. You'll be like,
right.
where's a dog? Like I again, I played it very casually, but like I never got more than like half the pictures in a single one.
Yeah.
So sometimes you're like, where did this happen?
Right.
Another thing, and this is Telltale to a T. At the end, it'll say like, you helped save Alyssa from
right. It tells
you,
and it also tells you what the community did.
And you can be like, what? Like in the first chapter, the first time I noticed it was like, you saved the baby bird, and I was like, what bird?
Right.
Yeah.
Now here's what comes into gameplay. I wouldn't have brought this up in story. I was trying to figure out, but I think it's more gameplay. Is that the pictures and choices, much like the helping Alyssa, are a lot of them are dependent on time. So, like, if you are exploring, like, the whole area when you're in a certain area, if you see something, you can stand in that point and rewind all the way back to the beginning of the moment of that scene.
Right.
And so what that does is you can, like... So things like, you saved the bird, you walk and you'll find a dead bird. And if you stand at that spot and rewind all the way to beginning,
I never even saw the dead bird
because you can move within. You don't rewind. You can stand in the same spot and time will rewind around you. So like, so what that means is that you can then like, rewind it and then, like for instance, when you have to sneak past Principal Wells when he's drunk.
Yeah.
Like, you rewind until he goes back and starts messing with the door.
Yep.
And then you can walk by.
Yep.
So it's the same idea where it's like, if you're exploring, you can rewind time. And it's a really cool mechanic. And a lot of the pictures after the first chapter depend on being able to rewind to make things work out.
Right.
So that's something that, like, is really... I think is really cool. There's some pictures with the squirrels where you have to... You have to, like, pick up an item, use it, but then you have to, like, make sure that you, like, move away so that the squirrels aren't scared.
Right.
Things like that. So, like, there's some cool mechanics with that as well.
Not only is it, like, being in the right place at the right time, it's, like, making the right time.
Exactly.
Kind of
So there's definitely a lot of adventure game aspects like that where you're basically setting these things up in order to be able to collect the picture. And obviously, it doesn't matter if you don't collect the pictures.
And
but it's a fun extra thing that I thought, especially my second time through, because the first time through, I tried to get all the pictures, but I definitely didn't. And this time through, I was like intent on getting all the pictures, and I did, and some of them were pretty difficult to get, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah, and like this is stuff that a game like this really doesn't have to do.
No,
again,
absolutely.
Let's compare it to the Telltale games. I mean, they're similar, and I think they it's an apt comparison. There's like Telltale's like vanilla compared to this,
Yeah, this is a game,
and
this is more a game.
It's a game.
Yeah,
whereas it's a game.
Telltale is just a storybook or whatever, and you get like a choose your own adventure where you can make certain big decisions and change the story, but like there's gameplay elements to it, like you're doing stuff, collecting things, whatever.
Now, that is amazing, and they did not have to go as far as they did. I don't know whether to put this under story or gameplay. I will say, in any game like this, where, especially a time travel kind of game, at the end I felt mostly deflated in the fact that, like, I didn't think at the end, because of all the stuff you could do, that any of my decisions meant anything. Like,
obviously, when it comes down to it,
I don't know if I'm going to ding it on gameplay or story for that. I feel like it might be gameplay because it's like playing the game. Like at the end, I was like, again, and I chose the bad decision at the end, but it's like you just feel like nothing you really did. Really,
yeah. Now, if you chose the good decision, obviously, like I said,
it's different.
It does affect who's at like the funeral. So there is that aspect to your decisions, like what you decided to do, and there's some other some other pretty cool gameplay decisions that I think this kind of falls under story too, but I thought were cool. So like for instance, if you go like when you're at the Vortex Club party and you talk to Victoria. You warn her about Nathan. If you warn her about Nathan, she will confide in Mr. Jefferson, and Mr. Jefferson will capture her, and she'll be in the bunker with you.
Oh, she was in the bunker with me.
And she'll get killed by him. Like, he'll say that he killed her. If you don't warn her about Nathan, she does not go to Mr. Jefferson, and she's not in the bunker.
Wow.
So, like, something that you think is actually good.
I definitely told. I mean, you probably did the first time, too. Why wouldn't
Absolutely. Because I'm like, of course. I'm like, I whatever. And I didn't the second time just because I was like...
And she wasn't there?
And she was not there. And, like, and because she goes off and hangs out with her friends, and then the only reason Mr. Jefferson grabs her is because she comes to him and says... Nathan's capturing girls and blah, blah, blah. So he's like, she knows too much. So he has to get her.
Yep.
So, like, it's a kind of a cool little gameplay thing in that, like, of course you would think the good thing to do would be to help your friend, this person that you don't like.
Oftentimes that's not the case.
Right.
And they do a really good job with that.
So that was cool. But yeah, I think that the ending will change. But I definitely agree with you that, like, it does feel that a lot of the major decisions, and even some of the minor ones that you've made up until the very end, are technically meaningless, like in the sense that, like,
because
they didn't affect the last decision.
So big.
Right, they didn't affect the last decision, which could have been cool, but, I mean... Obviously, I don't really know how you make that game. I mean, like, that, if you make, like, I feel like
that's too complicated of a story arc and tree. Like,
yeah, like, I feel like that would be, and I'm sure that it may exist already, and, I mean, I'd be interested to check it out. I know there's definitely things in, like, some games where, like, you know, if you kill certain characters off, then you lose, like, that part of the story to learn it.
Right.
But, like, usually, like, the main ending is not so affected, which might be interesting to see a game like that where, like, you know, like, you could make the decision to, like, let Chloe's dad die because you like Chloe's dad, and then you just end the game there. Like, make it like Clock Tower where there's so many endings.
So many endings. That
and
would
you
be
could just
neat.
make the decision not to go back, and
you
then...
know, I guess, and again, that's a what could it be kind of thing, but that would be really cool to have, like, 5 or 6 just different end... Chrono Trigger. Trigger you can end at, like, any point, so you could be like... there's a button there, it's like, I'm happy in this universe, Chloe's dead, but Chloe's dad is okay, and all this stuff's okay, and, like, maybe you're happy, because in that universe, you're, like, part of the rich kids, you're, like, friends.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's another thing. Right. So I'm going to put this under gameplay, and I'm actually going to bump my score up a little bit because of it. You get text messages throughout the game, and that is so endearing and fun. Yeah, like, so when you're in that,
and you watch them type too. Like, if you can read them later, but if you click on them when you get them, you'll see Max's responses.
So in that alternate reality, all these, like, rich crazy kids who you hate are, like, texting you, like, you're gonna be at the thing, and you're like absolutely, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
you're
like, totally,
and it's
like,
so,
kind of popular and mean.
Pretty freaking cool and pretty. They didn't have to do it, so I'm actually gonna bump my thing.
Like, Victoria, the major scary bee in the game, is, like, scared of you in this story. Like in the alternate world, she's like, "Are you okay?" And then 2 seconds later, she's texting you like, "You just left, and I'm really worried. Are you mad at me?" Like totally, like, scared of your opinions.
Yep. So, like, it would be cool to just be like, nah, I want to see how this ends. And, like, they wouldn't have to go crazy, but be like, this is what happened, you know?
I mean, clearly, if the bad ending is 30 seconds, or if that, they could have done those kind of endings as well. So
that would be really cool for the future. And again, I'm not going to dock it because
obviously,
it doesn't
exactly.
exist.
But
so, overall gameplay, better than can be expected. I mean, honestly, I feel like this is a story-based game that I can say has gameplay.
Yeah.
You know, although it's all still decision-making and wandering around. If I'm going to say adventure games have gameplay, then this has gameplay.
Right.
Great time, very deep, lots of different choices, an 8 out of 10.
I'm going to give this an 8.5 out of 10. Yeah. I think that I give it a little, I dock it a little bit because and this probably goes into one of the later categories of replayability, but, like, the choices thing, like you're saying, not adding up to the end. If they added up a little bit more to the end, like, to what you're able to choose or something like that, then I probably would have bumped it up to a 9. But yeah, I'll say 8.5 on that.
I know that we're not at the end yet, but I would love, not a sequel, but another game made by this company would be, like, fantastic.
Yeah.
It really
I don't care about these characters.
So actually this is the next part. Actually, let's go straight in.
I mean, you could check.
Let's switch it around. So graphics and atmosphere, and we'll get to sound after this. I'm just gonna give this very high, not necessarily on the graphics.
Right.
So this is again.
I mean, it came out a bit ago.
When
like,
we,
2
when
years
we
ago.
when we do these, we keep in mind the world the world that it's. How do I put this? That if it has a small budget, then we keep it in that world.
And what
this
year came out?
This is a small
whatever.
budget game from a couple years ago.
Right.
It's got pretty good graphics.
For an indie budget.
Once in a while, you'll have these close-ups. If you ever played a Mass Effect or Dragon Age,
right.
they have the close-up of the characters, they're talking, whatever. Sometimes it gets a little bit weird where they're like a little static and whatever. I had one really funny one where Max had a whole scene where her lips did not move at all.
Oh, I had that too. I think that might have been a PS4
in the
glitch.
diner.
That's just a PS4 glitch.
Okay.
Must have been.
So like at the very end, she just had this whole heartfelt thing. She
and it was like a climactic
scene. She was just like not moving her mouth, and it was pretty funny. Like
so it must have been a PS4 glitch because that didn't happen the first time.
That's out of literally 100,000 lines.
Exactly.
So, but like it was funny. So anyway, the graphics in general are really good. They do. Atmosphere is the key here.
Right.
Man, they make Arcadia Bay into being such a. I'm not, and I don't mean it in terms of the dictionary type A place. Wonderful.
Right.
Wonderful in that it's just.
Vibrant.
It's not
very
great.
Thought out.
It's not great.
Right.
It's like I imagine
all the
like,
details.
I imagine
there.
and again, this place is it's like a fishing town in Oregon.
Yeah.
I imagine like a semi rundown like Midwest kind of place that just so happens to be near the beach kind of thing. Because like a lot of these places, they're like. We're struggling. You talk to a fisherman, and
I mean,
he's
if you've been to places in New England, it definitely has that feel as well, like a coastal fisherman town in New England.
Yeah, it just
very
it does
similar.
such a great job, and you get these dichotomy of both. You're at this pretty preppy school. What's the school called again?
Blackwell,
Academy, where it's like Blackwell Academy, and
right.
Mr. Jefferson is like the number one, professor and whatever, and like you get that, but then you go to like Chloe's house and it's like pretty run down. You go to this diner and it's like decently run down, and like they just oh my goodness, they just do such a good job with the atmosphere. There aren't even technically that many places you go just because you're like revisiting Blackwell because you go to school.
Yeah,
but it's like
exactly.
But it's
and it's also a small town
Yes.
like on the coast, so there's not like a life. You know, I mean, they talk about Portland is like within driving distance, and that's where like Max lived for those 5 years. Seattle. Okay. Oh, but I guess this school is near Portland, like within driving distance, and so like obviously it's like you're near Philadelphia, but if you're in like Denver, PA. It's still Denver, PA.
Right.
But you're within an hour and a half of Philadelphia, and it's like a city.
Right.
So like you could be like in the middle of nowhere where there's nothing to do, Main Street. You know, Denver is like there's not anything to walk around and do at like an 8 p.m. on a Friday night.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's very similar to that idea where it's like it's not it's a very believable place in the world.
Yep.
Because everything's fleshed out.
And it's just, I mean, that's probably half of the reason why I just enjoyed it. Like, it was just because they do such a good job setting the scene and the atmosphere and the settings and whatever. Like, you just want to explore more.
Yeah.
Even the dormitories,
just
all
the stuff
you can enter all these girls' rooms and
Right.
and there's like so much specific stuff. They change they have these whiteboards outside the dorm rooms, and they're changed all the time.
Right.
Which is what an 18-year-old would do. They'd be like, Victoria Smells.
I mean, I don't know. Did you have those in college? Because we did. They were like attached to our doors.
No.
At least in the one dorm, that like whatever the RA in that dorm like went out and bought them and put them on everybody's
cool.
like. So it was cool. You could leave a message for like, oh, hey, we're going to dinner.
Drexel
whatever.
cares not for that plebeian stuff.
So it was. I mean, it was like a definitely a flashback to that or whatever. But I'm like even more so because these people are like still in a high school level.
Can I say something real quick about their dorms? So I went to Drexel about, let's not go over how many years ago at this point. And I shared a room that was smaller than Max's, so F this B. Like, seriously? Like, I only lived in the dorms for 1 year, but it was, like, definitely smaller than her.
All those kids
that
got
was
their
the
own
biggest,
room.
like, thing early in the game where I was
clearly
like...
that's a money place.
You wake up in the room, and I was like, where's your roommate? And there was one bed, and I was like, she's got a couch too? Girl. And it's just like, this is my, like... And I was like... Yeah, that's a money place.
Yeah.
So,
Obviously, if you're somebody that gets hung up on like privilege, don't play this game because these kids are all hella
and
privileged.
they do such a good job of
using
like
the word hella.
These are
because
literally
I played that game.
hella. So they do such a good job where it's like you see this and like everyone has their own room and Victoria's like
Right.
and like it's oh my god, it's such a good job where like all they care about is like this Vortex Club party or
Right.
whatever, and
Yeah.
then like you go down to the fisherman and he's like, I hope I have a job.
Yeah,
you know,
you're
like, there's
like,
like
damn.
nothing. And you're like, and
You
it's
know?
like not that far away,
Right,
Which
absolutely.
happens, a lot in America.
Yep.
Good places and bad. Anyway, this is going to be the highest single grade I've given on anything we've done so far
Because of that atmosphere.
Just it's just so. I mean, I really
say-
can't think of that many games that do atmosphere
right.
like this.
I will say for graphics, one thing that's going to bump up my score a little bit is they made the decision, and it's a really good decision. Whenever you see a photograph or picture in the game, they make it purposefully like done like a pastel art
like
style.
it's like drawn.
Like it's
Yeah.
drawn, but it's supposed to be a photograph, but they do it that way, and it added an extra level of like cool artistic thing.
Yeah.
But like because it would look really dumb if they just took the 3D models and put them in the picture.
Absolutely.
Now Max's pictures look like that, but I think that's because of the gameplay of her warping in or whatever. But like for the most part, pictures of people and stuff look like pastel drawings, and it really was like an extra little layer for them that probably saved them money.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like was cool because it was like, oh, that looks a lot better than what I expected or whatever.
That was wonderful. You would
Yeah.
find the photos of your fellow classmates, and they were like drawn in a cool way.
Yeah,
And you're
yeah,
like,
yeah,
they find
really
Nathan
neat.
Prescott's, and you're like, that's dark. And like,
Right.
you can tell what it is, but it's like very mysterious too.
Yeah,
And it's just
absolutely.
Like, wow, great job.
Yeah.
So overall, like I said, highest single grade I've ever given for anything. I consider this to be superbly excellent. 9.25.
Okay. Yeah, I would give this a 9.5 because I really, really liked the atmosphere and what they were able to pull off with the graphics of an indie company.
Oh.
Now, like, if this was a AAA title, you know what I mean? I
You would
can't-
expect a little more.
but I'm sure it would have looked even better. But, like the fact that they pulled off what they did.
Oh, and a $30 game brand new too. So
Yeah. I mean,
and
it's
and
great.
again, I think that we're both decently hard graders. So a 9.25 or a 9.5
Right.
is like
Oh, yeah.
pure excellence, people. Like it's
Absolutely.
pure excellence. So let's head over to sound. Now in sound, we include everything that is going to hit your ears: voice acting, music.
Right.
I can't really. Let's start with music. That's the simplest one. I can't really think of like. There's nothing like that. I'm like, oh, that's that song or that thing.
Wait, for real?
Really?
Yeah, the music plays a pretty big role in this. Like
Oh, like actual music.
right, songs.
Okay.
Because that's the thing. They pick some indie bands to set the scene of these kids.
You gotta tell.
So it's
you
like an
gotta tell
indie
me.
because it's like an indie movie where like the soundtrack is important.
Okay, let me put it this way.
Yeah.
If I'm considering my grade on this, I absolutely, unequivocally hate music like that. However, it fits.
Right.
And I for stuff I hate, I can tell when something is good and has its place. And it's good and has its place in this.
Right.
I hate that. I hate it. Man, sometimes I'm just like, Ashley and I will like have conversations where we're like, why are we married?
Yeah.
Because I'll be like, like, punk, 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 punk,
Right,
punk,
right,
punk,
right.
and she'll be like this bright eyes and stuff like
exactly.
that, and I'm like, I hate bright eyes.
Oh, right.
So
right.
like,
Absolutely.
Anyway, we're getting divorced.
like,
So
right.
that's
if
it.
you don't like indie music, then it's definitely gonna be a little bit. But it does fit.
That
and
is
it
not
gives you
gonna
the
that is not gonna affect my score. In fact, it's gonna put it up because.
It is.
It's
It's an atmosphere.
It's right. I mean, I wouldn't want to hear boss tones in this.
Right.
It would be terrible. Now, sound effects are actually, if I'm remembering correctly, and it's been a couple weeks, like really just good. Like you're outside and you hear like all like the birds and
absolutely.
whatever, and it's like that's very well done.
Yep.
I guess the only thing that some of the characters like
Some of their voices are a little
so
bit
let's talk. So some of the voices are fantastic. Mr.
Right.
Jefferson is phenomenal.
Right.
Like he's just great.
Chloe's dad is great.
Chloe's dad's great.
I mean, Chloe
and Max are like good.
Absolutely.
Good. There's
like the thing I would get frustrated is what she was saying, but not how she was saying
there's
it.
some
like,
characters that are a little silly, like that
Alyssa,
girl Alyssa is like
she's got a weird voice.
Such a weird I guess that Max.
Yeah,
And you're like,
she's
oh,
like
my
Lumpy
God.
Space Princess. Like she's
Literally,
definitely
yes.
right. And she like kind of has the same build and everything. She's just like, what are you doing? And every time you save her, she's like, Max, my hero, save me again.
Thank you so much. So like, I don't know if that was purposeful. And like I said, I'm not gonna ding it too much. Some of the smaller characters were like whatever, but like, listen, this is a game where they recorded like so much, and it overall it's like great. Like just like man, like you know.
I mean, I love Samuel, the janitor. Like,
oh yeah,
like I love his. I mean, he's so weird and
you never
quiet.
You never have to talk to him one time, and he has a great voice actor, and or like that black lady who's around. And you never have to talk to her. She has a great.
Yeah, you don't
voice
have
actor.
to, but you can, and she's good
overall. And like I said, just very very good overall. Some were a little silly, but like I guess with side characters, that like it is what it is. Maybe.
Maybe the other one that's annoying, and again, its prior character is Brooke, who like is potentially Warren's. Like in the alternate reality, that's who Warren ends up with, and you wonder why they're not together because they're both super nerds. Yeah. But like she's like, what? Like she's clearly on the spectrum in some way, shape, or form because she's like very like interactions, and I think this is on purpose. But like the way she talks is very much like you don't understand social cues, do you? Like,
so, but overall, excellent. Like very very good. I mean, just they did a great job. And again, this almost bleeds into atmosphere, but not quite. I mean, we're going to separate a little bit. I give it an 8.5 overall. Very very good job.
I will give it a 9 because personally I love the music that's in it. Like that. Like in fact, the moment when you spend the night at Chloe's house after breaking into the whatever, and then that Bright Eyes song comes on while you're laying in bed with the sun coming in, I listened to the whole entire song without getting up.
So lame.
Like I didn't hit circle to get up because you could just and that was a cool thing. Like just since it came up, is there's like points around the levels where you can choose to sit.
Yep.
Like next under a tree or on a bench. And there will be a little bit of extra dialogue that Max will have that you don't get to necessarily experience if you don't sit. But you can also just let it sit there, and it's like almost like a screensaver where like it just zooms around and shows the world and things happen. And nothing happens like that you can't change or whatever, but it's just like a nice little extra feature.
And in a lot of places you can turn on boom boxes and like hear like the sprite.
Exactly.
Kind of stuff,
you can choose. Like that's what happens later as the game progresses. You'll go up to like a music thing and you'll be able to pick like just like the story choices. You'll be able to pick what song you want to play, and it will play. I loved the song that she puts in her headphones at the very beginning about American Girls or whatever. Like that song, oh my god, I love that song. And there's so many songs but that Bright Eyes one, like I already knew and loved. Like that intro.
I'm playing this game. I'm literally already like holding back man tears. I don't need to hear like if I'm walking along on a nice day and I'm like, the world's a beautiful place, and then you have that, I'm like, I can see it, but it's like I'm already like dying on the inside. And I'm like,
although that scene though is a nice scene. Like they're laying together, they've just reconnected as friends. They're like, you saved her life, so it's a good moment to have the song because you're not like already depressed.
Too sappy. You need some Alice Cooper.
But like so it's like very. I like that a lot. You could also like put music on in the at the diner, and you can pick between a guitar or a banjo. What did you pick? I'm just curious.
Banjo.
I picked a guitar, and it was like classic rock.
Okay.
It was like it was kind of fun, but
banjo's the way to go. Man.
Yeah. But I'm gonna give it. What did you?
I think you already gave it a 9.
Oh yeah, because I loved this music, and I I'll say that if you don't like the music or if you really hate the music, I mean, it might affect you.
I don't think that should affect you because I don't like that type of music, and it fits.
Yeah.
First of all, if you're like, okay, I don't like that type of music, but if you're playing this game. And you're that far into this game, and you like absolutely abhor that music. Like I don't know why you're playing this game because
that's true.
It's an indie film.
You would have already gotten.
I'm probably one of that small percentage of people that's like, I love games like this, but I hate indie movies. And like people like that I'm not in the majority there, because most people will be like, oh my god, Bread-Is, I love Bread-Is. And like, no, absolutely not. I hate indie movies, but I'll play this game for some reason. so yeah, very, very, very good overall. So last two, let's go into fun factor. I think this one might be one of the ones that isn't like super high, because like
it's not fun.
It's not fun.
I mean, the gameplay thing is cool enough that that you could be.
Also, because this isn't a real game, let's also slash this out with like an annoyance factor, or like just in general, like that kind of thing. I thought overall that I wasn't annoyed too often. Once in a while, I would make a choice and be like, ugh, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or some of the sneaking missions were like a little silly, where you're like, cool, and you would just keep rewinding, cool.
Right.
And like sometimes you get in a situation where you would rewind, but if you did too much, you were caught again. And if you did it just a little bit, just right, you were still caught. You're like, okay, cool.
Well, another thing that would get annoying fun factor wise was, I was using the rewind a lot to do pictures, because the pictures you have to like use rewind in order to collect them all. But there's a thing where like if you have a conversation with somebody, you can rewind to before that conversation happens. And so like what would happen is I'd see something where I would need to take a picture, but in order to take the picture I would have to rewind almost all the way to the beginning of the time in that level, in that scene, which means going back before a conversation happens, which means I know I have to go back and have that conversation again. Some conversations you never have to, you can have to gain information, but rewind and never have to actually have. But there's other ones that you have to get through in order to advance the main story. And so like it's a little bit frustrating, because I was like, ugh. Like when I'd find it, so it almost towards the end it made me want to, when I was in an area, search for any potential picture opportunities, then go back and then have conversation opportunities, because once you get the conversations, it's annoying the way the rewind works.
They do have a nice function where when you already had a conversation, you can kind of skip through it. But there were a lot of times during the more complex scenes where I felt it still wasn't fast enough. Yeah, like, it was like... And if we're going to count frustrating with this, which I think we should, that was very frustrating. Like, the one that I just kept messing up over and over again was where you have to show Chloe that you have powers to go to the past in the diner.
Oh, right.
And it was, like, very specific. So, like, I thought I was doing it right, but for some reason, like, I had to, like... I don't know. It was, like, the very last one, like, I was, like...
the cop.
Or the cockroach, the cockroach.
Because so if you don't see the cockroach,
so I was like, I don't know, like someone runs into it, you know what I mean? And I kept getting it wrong, and it was like, well, you got to do the whole scene over again.
Yeah.
Dude, so that was that. There were times like that where you had this long scene, and you're like, blah, 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 and it's like going through skipping, and you're like, blah, 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 blah. Like, okay.
And another thing, because I'm sure it's because of the game design and the loading. So the rewind is very sporadic as far as how fast it'll rewind. It's not like as soon as you hit the rewind button, it rewinds at a steady pace until you stop. It like goes slowly, and then it rewinds and goes really fast. Right. And so it's like, because it's obviously loading. I mean, it's a game that needs to load the whole thing. And so, like, I can't really fault it, because that's a limitation of the game.
It is. I mean, they give you like a little circle where it shows you where a key event happened, but
still, so you could hit the button and it'll go right to the key event instead of the manually doing it. But like, it's still like, even when you go to the key point, it sometimes slows down or speeds up, and it definitely pulls you out of the fun you're having. Like if you're like, ooh, cool, like it makes you stop and go like.
So it's a game that's not meant to be fun, because it's an indie movie, and indie movies are sad all the time.
Right.
But with that being said, there are times... Tell me...
I know plenty of indie movies that are not sad all the time, but like, okay, that being aside, like this story is a lot. There's a lot of sadness in it. It's not sad all the time, but there is a lot of sadness in it.
Hey.
It's not sad all the time. There's plenty of heartwarming moments in it.
There's heartwarming, but yeah, okay.
But you probably put heartwarming in the same category as sad, which is like, I don't know what. I mean, if you cry a little bit at something nice, that's not necessarily sad.
Here's heartwarming. That was a good job during the game, son. Let's go get burgers. That's heartwarming. My heart's I'm melting. Okay, so like I said, it's not meant to be fun, but there are frustrating parts.
Absolutely.
7.5 for me.
Yeah, I'd give this fun, I might give this like a 6.5 on fun. Because, like...
I judged it a lot. I judged it not really much on the fun, but more of the annoyance.
Right, and I feel like this... I feel like this is going to be tough, because, I mean, I'm trying to decide between what's fun and what's under replayability. I'm going to probably judge... I'd either judge one higher than the other.
So, let's go into replayability. So, obviously, replayability.
Right.
Now, if I'm looking at this, again, a 5 for me is like... I'm very much on the fence if I want to play it.
Right.
Again, 1 is like Resident Evil 6, where it's like, I will never touch this again, and you couldn't pay me to touch this again.
I will never touch that game again.
And I will say for me specifically, unlike Parker generally is more of the kind that will like go through and do everything, and I'm more of like, cool, I had fun, the game's over, great, you know, kind of thing. So for me to finish a game...
Right.
And to like instantly start it up again is almost unprecedented.
Right.
Like it's just not a thing for me. So like 10 would be like a, oh my god, let's start over, you know, and I just don't do that.
Right, and it could also be like a 7 would be like in the future you could imagine picking it up again, or playing it with a friend. Like for instance, if you played this game through before you had met Ashley, say, and then you were with Ashley, you might be like, I'll go through that game again because she'll enjoy it. Like, so that replayability would be there for that.
So here's an interesting part about this game. This game is meant, as with all these story-based games, to be replayed again, to do all the different, you know, things.
Right, to see how they affect
I'm legitimately, like, I'm done.
Right.
Like, I just, like, I understand that it's meant to be that way, and I think that would be just, I guess if you're looking at it, just, like, the major negative I could say about this game, I don't want to play it again. Like, I'm not going to say I never would play it again, which would go below a 5.
Right.
I'm sitting at, because, like, I would think about it in that situation with a friend or whatever. I'll give mine away right now. It's a 6.
Okay.
That's fine. I just, like, and I feel like it should be higher. I feel like this should be one of those games where I don't want to start right away, but like 6 months down the line be like, well, let's go back and redo those parts because of the way the ending choice becomes. Right. It's like, it's cute to do all the different stuff, but like I don't feel a burning need to be like, well, what happens? Like even in like a TellTale game like Wolf Among Us, which we should do sometime, by the way, as like as one of these things.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I would want to play that before this again.
Right.
Because I feel like there are different scenes. Because there's different places you can go in different scenes. This one, you would always see the same scenes.
Well,
I mean,
no.
Is there different places you can go?
There's not different, like, overall places, like what you're talking about with Wolf Among Us. But there are different, like, things that will happen within each scene, like, that are fairly different.
Yeah, okay.
Like I said, when I played it through the first time, I chose the things to fall in love with Chloe. And so there are times when they, like, outwardly show their love, you know what I mean? That they're, like, together and actually not just friends. So, like, those scenes you don't get to see if you don't choose those options. Do you know what I mean? So it's not new areas, definitely, but it is different things that happen.
And I can totally see that, but just something about me, like, is just not really...
And that's
I'm
fine.
just not super interested. I don't know why.
So here's me. For replayability, I'm actually going to... What did I put for the other one?
6.5.
Fun factor?
6.5.
I'm going to go down to 6, but I'm going to go replayability up to 8. Because I did really want to replay this on the PS4 when you were like, I have it.
You did keep asking, and I'm so freaking slow at playing games.
Yeah, no, it was fine. I was just like, hey, where you at? Because I did want to play it. Because I played it right when it came out, and I was like, so 2 year, well, year and a half or whatever has passed since I played it. And I had the desire to play it through again. Like, I was like, oh, cool. Now, I will say that the replayability would have been, well, I guess the replayability is high, but the fun factor is low. And so that's where it falls apart for me, where it's like, I'm going to rate one of them low. So either I'd rate the fun factor high and the replayability low. One or the other is being affected by the fact that replaying it, like, through, the choices become, like, if you have just recently played it, the choices become pretty tedious, and also like trying to collect all the pictures. The way you have to do it to collect all the pictures
it does seem
is also a little bit tedious. So that's why the fun factor goes down. But I will say, like, I did have the desire to play it through again. collect all the pictures and see what other story like points I could have happen. So I'm gonna rate it higher replayability.
That makes sense.
But I'm gonna rate it lower on fun factor, and I'll say that like as far as that goes, like that will hurt your enjoyment during the replay. So the fun factor goes down sort of dramatically when you get into the replay or whatever. But yeah,
we have some totals here. Overall, mine came up to, out of the 6 different categories, 47.75, which averages out to an 8. It's like 7.98, which I'm going to bump up to an 8. And then yours came to 50, which averages out to 8.3. I think we actually have a decent rating system, because every time I add these things up, I'm like,
yeah,
this is an 8 game.
Yeah,
like, it's an 8
absolutely.
and again,
like Mush and I were recommending this to Spencer. Do you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
like we were like, oh, you gotta play. So like to have it come out to 8, like that's a game I would recommend. Like anything
Absolutely.
over an 8, I mean even a 7, I would probably recommend, but I might be like, I would want to know a little bit more about what a person likes. But an 8, I would recommend to anybody who plays games. Like if you play video games, and even some people that don't, I could even say like you should take the time to play this.
This is a game that could actually potentially get you into a new genre.
Right.
It's not like again, the Telltales. Like, I couldn't see that getting someone in who doesn't really like games like that, and they'd be like, I'm totally in now, kind of thing. But this is one that I think could really get him into.
Right.
Like, I couldn't really see before, like, Mush playing this, and he was like, oh, I love it, kind of thing.
Right.
It's just one of those games that, like, again, that can really get you into it. If we would end up with, I think a rough breakdown for how we do it, again, 5 is average. Not 7. 7 is average in a lot of these gaming things. 5 is average for us. So anything below a 5 would be only recommended in very particular situations.
Right.
Like, I like bad games. Great.
Right.
A 5 or a 6 would be recommended to a person who very specifically likes a genre. So if you played a horror game and you're like, dude, I give it a 5.5, but Spencer, you love horror games, you'll get enjoyment out of it just because you like horror games.
Right.
Great.
Or it's like, or if you're a person who plays like everything, and you're like, I'm out of things to play, and you're like, have you played this? It's a 5. Like, you'll have an okay time.
You're
like,
not gonna hate.
You're not gonna be like, I hate this, but you're gonna just
it'll pass the time before whatever game comes out
before you
next
die.
Thanks, indie movies. And then you have like the higher 6s or 7s, which is more of like the it's very good, but it's not gonna make you into like I like adventure games
right,
now.
Exactly.
Then you have the 8s and the 9s, and those are more like, you could literally, like, if somebody presented to me a game like this, I would like probably put down what I am doing, currently playing, and play it.
Exactly.
Because it's just like it got me into the mood for it. Not again, and this is very interesting. Not for this one in particular. I don't want to do it again. But if there was a similar one, or if I found out this company made one or is making another one, I would be like, oh yeah, absolutely,
be on board.
This would be one of those where I'd be like watching
the
TellTale Walking Deads. If I did them, they would probably come out to like a 7, whatever, like overall. And like the new one is coming out soon, and it's like I know when it's coming out, and that's rare for me to personally be like, care. I know myself, not just for the store. I know for myself when this comes out.
Exactly.
Kind of
like I'm anticipating it.
So this, if there was a Life is Strange 2 for whatever reason, it was all different characters. I would pay attention to that development cycle and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So 8.3, really good stuff. Highly recommended. I mean, it's pretty long too. It was just a great time. I'm really glad they recommended it to me. Don't think I'll ever play it again, but it's one of those games I will never forget. Like, I'll always remember.
Yeah.
Like,
and it would be something that you reference when talking to people about other games. Like, it's something that comes up in conversation with people that I know that have played it. Like, because it's like, oh, remember that? It's like that part. It's like that, because it was good.
That's about the highest thing you can give to it.
Exactly.
Like,
to any kind of entertainment or art, it's like that you think about it or talk about it after experiencing it. Like, that's good. I mean, that's going to be a good thing. Yep.
So hopefully that developer comes out with another one, and they make another. Can make this one a little less indie, make it a little more about like football, like a football one where you're like, it's going and you're not playing football, but maybe it's like Friday Night Lights, except for maybe it's set up more like a Madden where like you're on the Patriot. Are you describing Madden? No, 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 don't worry. But maybe they give each player like a rating that you can like edit and stuff. Anyway, so yeah, really good time. Really fun. Thank you once again for being on the show, and we'll have to see what game we can play next, so we can do another one. Because man, these reviews are easier with two people rather than me just going on for a long time. So thank you guys for listening, and have a great one.